I feel terrible about the fact that Monica Lewinsky's life was defined by it, unfairly, I think. You know, over the years, I've watched her trying to get a normal life back again. But you got to decide how to define normal.
Monica Lewinsky is a name forever etched in America's cultural memory, not just for her involvement in one of the most sensational political scandals of the 20th century, but also for the public shaming that followed. Known as the former White House intern whose affair with President Bill Clinton led to his impeachment, she became a target of ridicule, mockery, and media exploitation. For many years, she remained largely silent, enduring a narrative that portrayed her as the villain. But nearly 3 decades later, she's reclaiming her voice as a producer, advocate, and influential public figure. The day the world changed.
I remember opening the door, and these were in the days where people would get a newspaper delivered, and in DC it was always several, like the Post and the New York Times, and I remember seeing my name above the fold and in the investigation, and looking down the hall and seeing the exact same newspaper outside everybody else's door. And it was shocking. It was terrifying. And I didn't actually know how to process anything. And really it was a moment where life as I knew it was over.
When the news of Monica Lewinsky's affair with President Bill Clinton broke, it wasn't through a press conference or scheduled release. It exploded across headlines, broadcast news, and the nascent internet, igniting a media frenzy unlike anything seen before. That single morning in January 1998, as Lewinsky walked the hall of her apartment complex, she saw her name on every doorstep, her private life now public property. The betrayal hadn't come from Clinton directly, but from her co-worker and confidant, Linda Tripp, who had secretly recorded their conversations and turned them over to the FBI. The sheer scale of the media reaction is hard to fathom today. The Washington Post published 127 articles about Lewinsky in the first 10 days alone. Public sympathy was short-lived. Within a week, she was vilified, cast as both seductress and stalker, and repeatedly slut-shamed by talk show hosts, pundits, and late-night comedians. She had no legal protection, no media team, and no experience. She had simply been a 24-year-old caught in a power imbalance of epic proportions. In those early days, Lewinsky wasn't concerned with narratives or legacies. She was fighting to stay afloat. Behind the scenes, she was threatened with jail time and pressured to wear a wire. The weight of her predicament was immense, and the damage to her life immediate. Her name was synonymous with scandal, and her dignity was sacrificed for ratings and ridicule. But even then, a quiet resistance began to take shape. Her internal world, though battered, started processing the scope of the injustice. The scandal through her eyes.
So there was an enormous amount of guilt. I didn't want him to lose his job. So there was a part of me that felt, good, deny it. This is what you should do. You know, that sort of a thing. And then there was a part of me that was so humiliated. And to kind of have the most powerful man in the world saying that, basically your damaged goods, is not something you want as a 51-year-old woman and not something you want as a 24-year-old woman.
While President Clinton made his now infamous denial on national television, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman," Monica Lewinsky sat in stunned disbelief. Torn between shame and loyalty, she initially supported the lie, convincing herself that keeping his job was worth the price of her silence. But the psychic toll of being reduced to a global punchline was inescapable. Lewinsky never denied the relationship, but she had been forced into the public square by others. She was never granted the opportunity to explain herself on her own terms. With Clinton remaining in office, publicly minimizing her role, and privately distancing himself, the power imbalance became undeniable. What was once a complicated private affair turned into a national spectacle, one where the most powerful man in the world emerged relatively unscathed while she was left jobless, ostracized, and broken. Her self-esteem crumbled under the weight of the world's collective judgment. As Lewinsky has explained in several interviews, the isolation was unbearable, the shame endless, and the ability to find a future deeply compromised. She wasn't just grieving the relationship, she was mourning her reputation, her privacy, and her ability to start over. Despite this, she found a glimmer of resolve. With time, therapy, and hard-won introspection, Monica Lewinsky began to see what had happened wasn't simply a matter of poor choices, it was also the result of systemic cruelty, institutional failure, and the kind of media ecosystem that devours young women to protect powerful men. A voice takes back the mic.
There's a scene, and it was sort of an infamous moment in this whole scandal where you flash your thong underwear at the president.
I know.
But here's what's interesting about you, Monica. You told the producers you should include that scene. You pushed for it.
I did. Well, I was, as a subject, I was incredibly grateful when I saw that it was missing. But I realized as a producer that, particularly because I was involved, that the credibility of the show would have been significantly affected. And I didn't think that was fair to anyone else. But more than that was really, I shouldn't get a pass.
The FX series Impeachment, American Crime Story, marked a turning point for Lewinsky. Not just because the series revisited the scandal from her point of view, but because she served as co-producer. For the first time, she had a seat at the table and a say in how her story would be told. Her decision to include uncomfortable details, such as the infamous thong flashing moment, was an exercise in integrity, not self-preservation. Monica Lewinsky made it clear she did not want to whitewash her actions or escape accountability. Instead, she embraced the opportunity to show the emotional truth behind the events, truths that couldn't be captured in headlines or depositions. This version of the story wasn't about scandal, it was about humanity. Her role in shaping the series proved cathartic. It allowed her to confront her past with the tools and confidence she never had in 1998. Working alongside producer Ryan Murphy and writer Sarah Burgess, Lewinsky was finally able to insist on context, texture, and dimensionality. No longer a supporting character in someone else's drama, she had become the narrator of her own life. In the process, she also helped shift public perception. By confronting the past head-on and refusing to be sanitized or erased, she opened the door for other women who had been shamed and silenced. She reminded the world her name is not just a punchline, it's a symbol of survival. Finally calling him out.
I think that the right way to handle a situation like that would have been to probably say it was, nobody's business and to resign, or to find a way of staying in office that was not lying and not throwing a young person who was just starting out in the world under the bus.
After nearly 3 decades of deflection, Bill Clinton's public apologies have remained generic and distant. He has never spoken to Monica Lewinsky directly, nor issued a private apology. When asked in 2018 if he owed her one, he replied, quote, "No, I do not." But Monica has now clearly stated what she believes should have happened. Clinton should have resigned. This statement marked a major shift. For years, Lewinsky avoided directly criticizing the former president. She acknowledged the complexity of the situation and their relationship and accepted her role in it. But her recent interviews show a new clarity. She now sees his conduct for what it was, a misuse of power and a failure of responsibility. Her call for resignation isn't about vengeance, it's about accountability. Clinton's decision to lie publicly, to discredit her privately, and to allow his administration to brand her as unstable inflicted deep and lasting harm, not only on her life, but on the public trust. Monica's words were not explosive, they were calm, reflective, and grounded in lived experience. Reclaiming her power on her own terms.
I think the thing that is so important about change, and it's one of the things I admire about you, and I'm so excited for you and grateful to you, is that you are pushing forward in a path in business and podcasts as a young woman, right up there with these men who are valuing what their contribution is in their podcast, and they're having that reflected to them and what they've sold them for. And you have done that, Alex. I hope you take that in every day. Because of you, other women are going to be able to have successful podcasts that they then move on to other places for.
Beyond television and documentaries, Lewinsky has entered a new chapter, one centered on advocacy and storytelling. She launched her own podcast titled Reclaiming, a name that perfectly sums up her journey. In it, she delves into the themes of shame, redemption, and narrative ownership, not just through her lens, but through the voices of others who have experienced public fallout. In a media landscape crowded with content, Lewinsky's voice is unmistakably authentic. Her interviews are introspective and layered, offering a rare combination of empathy and insight. She doesn't claim to be a hero or a martyr. She's simply a woman who lived through a cultural hurricane and lived to tell the tale on her own terms. She has also become a leading voice in the fight against cyberbullying and public shaming. Drawing from her own trauma, Lewinsky has collaborated with organizations and campaigns that raise awareness about the emotional toll of online harassment. Her TED Talk, The Price of Shame, went viral and helped shift the conversation from judgment to empathy. What makes Monica Lewinsky's current chapter so striking is not just her ability to survive, but her refusal to disappear. She could have changed her name, moved overseas, or simply faded into anonymity. Instead, she leaned in. She showed up, and she has turned the scandal that nearly ruined her into a platform that's helping others survive their own. Now it's time to hear from you. After everything Monica Lewinsky has endured, do you think Bill Clinton should publicly apologize to her directly, or is it too late? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.